welcome to the Lipstick League, where sports and pop culture come to play. I'm Natalie Eganoff.
And I'm Nicole Mahalik, and we have a very special guest today.
Woo!
Here's why I'm really excited, because the last couple guests we had on have been personal friends of mine.
Yeah.
And now we have a personal friend of Natalie's, who obviously is a badass, because that's the only way that we're allowed to have people as guests.
Yes.
So Taryn, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I told Natalie, like, I genuinely listen. And the other day we were talking and I was like, I'm gonna have to watch myself, because when I listen to you guys, I like in my head, like talk back, like that one meme where it's like listening to podcasts and that's just an advertisement of people. And it's like, here's all my friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just have to watch what I say, because I just feel like, even though like I don't really know you, Nicole, I've like known who you are for forever, but I was just like, oh my God, these are like my people. So
well, Natalie raves about you too. And like, obviously when we started, it was like very football-y, and we're like, we need to start giving the hockey the love. And she's like, well, yeah, like obviously Taryn will be on, and the whole, and I was like, okay. And then I even bought a brand new Flyer sweatshirt.
Oh,
look how cute this is.
Oh,
yes, that is really
that's
cute.
so cute.
At
Oh, I love
Target,
the laces.
I know at Target they had it. So I figured I'd wear it.
You wore it for the occasion?
For the even though you
Thank
can't see it, there's a little bit of it. Oh wait, there's the logo.
Yeah.
Can I show you actually what we got sent? I mean, this is probably like a bad visual. I have it right here. So have you guys heard of the Twitter account Fake Coatsy, who pretends to be?
Yeah.
So okay, so this is a fun story. So when Scott and I, it was one of our very first shows, and Fake Coatsy tweeted at us and was like, if you can get Scott to say this thing on air, I'll send you guys like a box of free t-shirts. And it was like, it was funny. I forget exactly what it was, but Scott saw it, and he's such a champ. So he was just like, oh, done deal. Intermission live, second period, we're doing it. And then the other day we get a box of Fake Coatsy t-shirts.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
But like, I think this is a medium, and I'm like, I'm not a huge, super huge person, but I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna fit in this, but
yeah,
I almost wore it, and then I was like, it's a bit aggressive, so I.
No, that's really cute. So for those listening who are not in the Philadelphia area, Taryn Hatcher is the pre and post game analyst and host for the Philadelphia Flyers, former, I guess, rinkside reporter for the Flyers. Started her career in Hawaii. So wait, all right, why don't you start and tell everybody like how you got started in broadcasting, because she also double majored in political science, and like this is why she's the most fascinating human. So
yeah,
start at the beginning, and then we should tell how we became friends.
Yeah, and start like at the very beginning. Like you're from the area, you're from the Philly area.
Right, which is even better. Yes.
You don't have to, like, I always joke around and be like, okay, so what hospital were you born in?
So in Willingboro, New Jersey, the night before Christmas, 1992, Connie Hatcher got to pushing and your girl showed up, jazz hands.
Yeah.
Wait, your birthday's on Christmas?
Christmas Eve, yeah.
Oh my God, fun.
Yeah, I like it. Some people hate it. I'm like,
did your parents always make sure that you had double presents and stuff?
Like, yes and no. Sometimes I wanted, like, one year I wanted a basketball hoop, and my dad was like, so here's the deal. Santa doesn't want to buy you a basketball hoop and, 85 birthday presents, because a basketball hoop's expensive.
Right.
Or whatever. And so, but I never really, I think when there was a phase when I cared a lot, like probably like 8 to 11 or something. Or
right.
Those, terrible ages where you're just like a brat. And
you're like, I'm getting shorted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my one aunt just used to be like, here's a present. It's very special. It's for both. And I would open it up and it was like a Bath and Body Works set. And I was just like, okay.
You're like, thanks, Aunt Kathy.
Yeah. Like, cool, this is great. Oh my gosh, how'd you know I'm a warm vanilla sugar girl?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I grew up in Delran, went to Delran High School, always knew, probably since I was like 10, I knew I wanted to go into sports broadcasting. But like, I mean, I loved my experience at Delran Public Schools, but it's like a small school system. Didn't really have a lot of kind of like opportunity to dive into it there. And then when I was looking at colleges, I knew I wanted to intern in Philly, and I knew I wanted to intern in New York because I have no family connections to the business. So if you hear the name Hatcher and you think Darian Hatcher from the Flyers, we are not at all related. Would have loved that nepotism, but
or Terry Hatcher from Desperate Housewives.
Yeah, I think if you look at a picture of Darian and me and Terry, I pull Darian more than I pull Terry. But it's okay. But yeah, so then I went to Rutgers because I figured it'd split the difference. My freshman year, the dean of the journalism school was just like, dude, double major, like just do it. It's not gonna kill you to do it, and it'll only help you in the long run. So I became a political science major as well, and there was like a hot second where I thought maybe I would go down that path. And then while I was at Rutgers, I was lucky enough to intern actually at iHeart. It was then Clear Channel in Philly.
Yeah, where?
Like out in Ballackinwood. I was out there.
Yeah, I didn't know this either. I just found this out.
What year?
Summer of 2013, maybe.
Wait, so I was there then. Who did you intern with?
With with Mina Say What.
You did?
Yeah.
Did you come into in the morning?
Mm-hmm. And I begged to get put on like well, I really wanted to be on 104.5 because that was the alt station.
Yeah.
And I was like in college and I was like a poli-sci major and like I listened to Red Hot Chili Peppers. So like put me on the alt station.
Yeah.
And and then I kind of ended up getting moved later on. But yeah, I also that was like the first internship where I was like figuring out what you can and can't do.
I wish I was there then. That's when I was Nick the Web Chick and I was doing mornings on Mix and I was in charge of all the socials, but Mina oversaw the socials for Power and DAS. I mean, obviously I'm sure we crossed, but I wish I would have been able to scoop you up and been like, because I loved having interns. Mina did not so much.
I was like scheduling, like, I just remember kind of being like, because I did it because it felt like it was a great opportunity to like get into seeing broadcasting in any way, shape, or form in Philly. And I thought, this will look good on my resume and everything else. And I never really thought about radio. Like I never really considered it, but I was just like, hey, this is a great opportunity, really competitive. And they didn't hire that many interns and whatever. And then I got there and I was like scheduling social posts and I was like, oh man, this intern stuff is like really not glamorous.
It's not.
No. And then, and then I went from there and I interned at Comcast Sportsnet, which is now NBC Sports Philadelphia. And actually that internship is how I ended up getting my job back here. So if for people who listen, who think, how do I get into the field? I always tell people it's tough now, but like internships are
1,000%. Yeah.
Yeah. Like they're such a connector if you don't have like family in the business or friends in the business or whatever. And then I interned up at CBS 2 in New York and made a bunch of connections up there too. And that's actually how I got connected with my agent now, was through, I was at CBS. Bruce Beck is the sportscaster for NBC4 up there. And Bruce Beck saw me trying to tape for demo reels. Like they would let me do, because I would show up on off days and like just like do extra work. And so they would let me do basically fake stand-ups and they would give them to me for my demo reels. And Bruce Beck would be out covering all the same things as me. And he would see me do it. And then he started to like, even though he was from a different station, would like give me tips about like stand with one shoulder forward if you want to look powerful and like this, that, flirt with the camera, all kinds of weird stuff that I like was just standing there and I was like, welcome to Madison Square Garden, stiff as a board.
Yeah.
And then Bruce and I ended up staying in touch. And years later, he ended up setting me up with my now agent through his agency. So I always just include all this crap because it's like, it really is, it's these things where when you're like super poor and super broke and super tired, that they come back to you, I think, a lot of times, and the payoff can be there if you put in the work. But yeah, that was a trip, because I just remember being like, especially when I was going to New York, those train tickets from Rutgers to New York were like $33 a day, and it was an unpaid internship.
Yeah.
And so, and I like made some decision at some point in college where I was like, I'm going to graduate early. No idea. I mean, I do know why, but it was like kind of dumb. And
well,
so I was like,
say it was dumb because you have to be smart to graduate early.
Yeah, but I was like,
don't sell yourself short.
I was like, I always thought to myself, if everybody's graduating in May and all of their reels are going out into the world in May, why would I graduate in May? I'm going to graduate a semester early and graduate in December. And then I'll have less competition and I'll be more likely to get a job. Whether or not that had anything to do with anything, to this day, I don't know, but I stuck to that plan and I got a job like immediately out of college. But I just remember, like, I was taking like 21 credits of classes, which is a fair amount of classes, and then waitressing at Chickies and Pete's when I wasn't interning, and then interning. And then it was just like 4 months of just being like, just burnt out.
Yeah.
But I remember being like, I feel so important. Like, this is so important. Like, this is what it takes. This is what it makes the ball roll. And then, you know, you get going. And then, so long story long, it was nuts, but it ended up being, you know, super pivotal in my career. And then I ended up getting hired by Rutgers to do stuff for their men's and women's basketball team and their football team. And then Big Ten Network, Rutgers just moved into the Big Ten Conference. Big Ten Network kind of didn't have a ton of talent hired in the area. So even though I was a student, they started hiring me to do sideline for their games. And then I put a reel together and then I sent it everywhere. And then, I ended up in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I was there for 3.5 years.
That's amazing.
And then one day my old boss from NBC, Michelle Murray, called me and she was like, do you have a reel? Do you have it out in your contract? You know, and I sent it to her. But even like the whole time I was out in Hawaii, I was in touch with like her and Marshall Harris and Derek Gunn, like a bunch of people who were still at NBC Sports Philadelphia. So I tried to make sure I was like, I don't know if I was being annoying, but I was trying to be on people's radar. And then I ended up back here, and then c'est la vie. Now I'm doing what I'm doing.
Okay, so I have a couple questions. So first, did you always have, because Natalie and I talk about this a lot, and it's why we connected, and I'm assuming it's the same for you, but like you obviously had that thing where like you just wanted it so bad. And do you feel like you always had that, or did you feel like there was a point? Because I felt the same, like when you talked about the train tickets, I did an internship. I was at Drexel and I would go 2 or 3 days a week to New York. So I'd take the train from 30th Street to Trenton, switch trains and go from Trenton to New York. And it was an unpaid internship. And I paid, 30, I couldn't afford Amtrak. So did you feel like you always had that? And then were you apprehensive to move to Hawaii, or were you just like, let's just go?
I think I've always had it, like, since I was a little kid. I'm competitive by nature. Like, and it's not even like I want to beat people. It's just like, I want to, whatever the goal is, I want to get there. Like, that's that kind of competitive.
Wait, what's your sign? Oh, wait, you're a Capricorn.
I'm a Capricorn. So one of my friends in Hawaii was like all into reading charts. Like, she would get your, your longitude and latitude of your birth and your time and everything. So I'm like Capricorn sun, Capricorn moon, Scorpio rising.
Wow.
So it's like,
I know, right?
Wow.
I'm like
boss tendencies right there.
Yeah, it's just like, it's like a workhorse who's just every once in a while just like pops off.
Yeah. A lot of lists. You make a lot of lists?
If I wish I brought my Flyers post game notes, because there's like just like, everything is there.
Yeah.
My Apple calendar and my phone is like, just packed. And if someone asks me if I can do something, even if I'm tired, I'm just like, yeah, I'll do it. Like, just give it to me. Just let me do it. And then once I agree to it, I have to like control it start to finish. Like I have to do every part of it. So yeah, but yeah, to answer your question, I just like since I was a kid was super goal oriented, and I know you guys just talked to the Lamoureux twins. It's interesting when I talk to them because whether I ever would have been good enough or not, like I loved soccer before I had a bad injury. I was like recruited D1 for soccer, and you know, but it was always kind of like a placeholder goal because there was no. I had watched the Philadelphia Charge my whole early childhood and then watched that league fold and then make new leagues and whatever. And there was so much instability that like that was never really the dream. Broadcasting always was. So once I got to Rutgers and it was kind of like, okay, now you can do whatever you want to do with it, but it's entirely on you to do it. I was like, perfect. Like, let me get in the driver's seat of this car, fuel it up and take it wherever I got to go. And then I remember being at Rutgers and like there were kids who had insane internships at Rutgers. Like I knew this one girl who interned at the Today Show. And I remember thinking like, how am I ever going to get hired if I'm just interning at, you know, I love NBC Sports Philadelphia, but if I'm interning at a regional sports network and she's interning at the Today Show, like, and, but I just always, I didn't ever want to beat anybody. I didn't ever want to push anybody down, but I always wanted to finish first.
Yeah.
And I always, my whole motto was always like, if you put my resume next to anybody else's, I just want it to be such like a non-debate about who you're picking and whatever I have to do to get there. Like I'll worry about sleeping on the weekends or something. Like I'll figure it out. And even a few times my parents were like, you can't do this. You're going to burn yourself out. You're going to be miserable. And I did. I mean, I just like, there were a lot of times where like I kind of would sleep like 4 hours or so a night. And then on Friday, if I had like the day off from class and then I was waitressing at Chickies and Peace at night, I would just sleep Thursday night and then all the way through the day Friday and then just go to work and kind of, but that's the thing is like when people sit here now and it's just it's water off the dove's back every time anybody says anything to me now about like, oh, I wonder how she got her job or she's just this or she's just that. It's like, I don't really care about what you have to say. Everybody who knew me in college could tell you. Everybody who knew me in Hawaii could tell you. Yeah. Everybody at CBS 2 could tell you. Everyone at NBC Sports Philadelphia could tell you. Like, when you really put in the work, I think in the end, even though it kind of sucks in the moment, it makes you feel better about it. And I honestly enjoyed it. Like, something about being burnt out, but knowing I emptied the tank was, like, super worth it to me, which is probably a little, like enjoying self-inflicted harm, but I didn't mind.
I think you're so right, because I say that a lot. Like one of my really good friends, she was like, wow, like you really did like work your ass off. And then she's like, remember every weekend. And so I was graduated Drexel and then I was working as a receptionist from 9 to 5 because I wanted to be on the radio. So every weekend I would drive back and forth to Lancaster. And then I was still on the promotion crew. So I was basically working 3 jobs. But I loved it. Like, I didn't feel like it was burnout. Do you know what I mean? Because it was just like what I wanted to do. And I knew that that's how you get there. And I think too, when you made the comment about people like, oh, I wonder how she got to where she is. It's your integrity and your work ethic that other people see. People on the internet don't see that, but people that you worked with, and it's all about your relationships. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And when you intern and you make really good connections and you have a great work ethic with great integrity, people want to help you.
Well, and I feel like, and also when you think about it, it's just like Taryn came back to Philadelphia. What year was that? Like 2017? 2018. So it's like she comes back on the scene, but like the world doesn't know, and they don't know this about any of us, is that there's years and years and years and years of work that went into just getting back here.
Yes.
It's just like, and people don't recognize that because they think that it's just like, you just like walk into this opportunity, right? Like, so when I got to the Fanatic in 2016, people thought that that was like my first thing. And I'm like, wait a minute, no, there's years and years and years of shit, you know, that I did before this. And it's like, people don't recognize, but that's like with any profession, right? But I feel like in ours particularly, because there is not one straight track to get there.
Yeah.
It's like people don't realize that it doesn't just start when you start that job. It started like 10 years prior when you were at Rutgers and you're like, okay, like it started the moment you were like, how do I get there? Like, how do I plan this? You know, like it started way before when you were at iHeart. Like that's when the journey like starts.
Yeah. And I remember talking to like when Natalie, when you and I really first hit it off, and you were like, yeah, like I was working at a hospital and trying to like get my foot in the door. And I'm sitting there like, this is the thing that, you know, I don't expect anybody to know. I don't even really expect anybody to care, nor do I expect anybody to like me. But don't ever question like the foundation by which I got here, because like my tape out when I went out to Honolulu, and I know people are like, oh, it's Hawaii, like it's beautiful and this, that, and the next thing. But like it was just a cattle call. Like my tape was sent out along with like 120 other tapes. And the other people I'm sure had like one market under their belt, but I had already worked at Big Ten Network, which is considered like a national network.
Yeah.
And they picked me. And then I went out there and I left every single person I knew and moved to a place that I had never been, where, by the way, there's like a whole nother language involved in doing the broadcasts that me as a white girl from New Jersey better know how to say before I go on television. Otherwise, it's like, it's not just like a bad look, it's disrespectful. And so it was a tropical island in the middle of the ocean, and it was beautiful and the people were kind. Like I'll never complain about that part. But like it wasn't easy by any stretch of the imagination. For 6 months, I was like checking flights home. I was like, like, can I get back to Philly? Like I was so homesick. So yeah, I mean, it's just, I feel like all of us, when I was on Andrea Helfrich's podcast, we were talking about it. It's like a lot of the like bad vibes are so external, and then like us internally, every time we meet someone, we're just like, oh my God, like you're just like me. This makes me feel at home.
Well, and that's what's funny. So Taryn and I feel like we connected because she would, you know, how I like have sparred with people on Twitter like forever. Like that's just my style. So like people would be like talking shit to me and I'd be going back at them. And then out of nowhere, she would just come in and like throw like a haymaker. Like, and we had like never formally met each other, but like, you know, she starts at NBC Sports Philadelphia, you know, I start following her, she follows me back. And then like all of a sudden, like, I don't even know, it was just like certain topics. She would be like, actually, and just like come in and back me up. And I was like, yes. And then like, I was like, oh my God, her tweets are so funny. I was like, this girl is amazing. Right. So then I saw her in La Colombe and I was like, oh my God, it's Taryn Hatcher. So I was like, hi, Taryn. Like, I know that we're kind of like Twitter friends, but like, hi, it's me, Natalie. Like, and you know, anybody who like is in sports broadcasting, you know, like we just like there's just like an instinctual like bond, I think, that you have because we all have this common interest in like wanting to be in sports. So then, we became friends and the rest is history. But then we realized how much more we had in common because she's from Delran, which is like hop, skip, and a jump away from Northeast Philly.
It's Northeast Philly adjacent. Like half my high school, their parents are from Northeast Philly. And like,
Northeast
Natalie and I was saying the other night, Natalie and my life are parallel lines that are just like going in the same direction along the same timeline.
And we have like kind of like we have a bit of like the same like mentality and like attitude when it comes to stuff, which I just think is like hilarious. We're like, be nice or we'll like cut you. You know, like it's like that.
Confrontation, don't threaten me with a good time, baby. I'm here.
I always said like one of the things I love about Natalie was because I used to listen to Mike Missinelli when I was still at iHeart, and her tweets are amazing. And I'm always like, God, I'm so bad with comebacks. Like she's so good at it. And I'm always like, your mom, you know what I mean? Like I'm just not Twitter savvy. I'm way better on Instagram stories than I am on Twitter, but you know, we all have our things. But before we talk about hockey, talk a little bit about what was Hawaii like and what's the sports scene like in Hawaii?
Oh my God. Hawaii was awesome. We're probably going back this summer because I wanted to go back this past summer and then obviously like, you know, 2020. Hawaii was awesome. I'm wearing my Lion Coffee Hawaii shirt now that I wear all the time. It was great. Like it was definitely really hard at first. It's definitely like very isolating. And if you don't really like jump in full throttle to like create a life there. I can see how people get isolated. I was lucky that I made really good friends kind of somewhat early on, and that their families like took me in. It's called Hanai family. It's like when like an island family kind of like adopts you.
Mhm.
So I always had a place to go for holidays and birthdays.
Yeah.
The sports scene was really cool, to be honest with you. Like there's a few things. First of all, so when I first got there, the Pro Bowl was still there, and it was there when I first moved there.
That's cool.
And then the PGA and the LPGA Tour both come to Hawaii, which was always fun to cover. And then like the other massive thing really, other than University of Hawaii sports, is that like Hawaii is just like a crazy football place. Like people, I guess, don't really realize, because I mean, it really is like another country. Like it should, in all fairness to Hawaiians, like be another country.
Yeah.
But they are so tapped into football, NFL, college, and their high school football scene is like, I mean, I went to a state championship game and there were 20,000 people there. So
Wow.
Yeah.
it's
Amazing.
huge. I mean, and you look at the people who come out of Hawaii, like whether they end up being NFL busts or not, but like Tuatongo Vailoa and Marcus Mariota were,
Yeah.
you know, Tua was becoming a 5-star recruit when Marcus just won the Heisman, which was when I first got there too. And so it was so much fun, because Friday and Saturday you were covering like every massive high school football game, which was really fun. And then UH would play on Saturday, University of Hawaii football would play on Saturday, and then on Sunday, every single guy who has Hawaii ties, whether they played at UH or they were from Hawaii or, you know, whatever, we would cover them. We'd follow them around the NFL, which was really great because I grew up very like Philly first. I think when you grow up in a big regional market, that just happens.
Yeah.
And so being forced, when I was at Rutgers, it was a lot more like Philly, New York, but it's not really different because other than the Jets, like the Giants are in the Eagles, you know, division and everything else. So it forced me to pay attention to like Pac-12 football on Saturdays and, you know, all around the league on Sundays a bit more than I did before growing up. Yeah, it was really, honestly, it was really fun. And it was really cool because like women's athletics is also huge out there. So the University of Hawaii volleyball team is massive, which was really cool for me to see because I'd never really seen packed arenas. Well, at Rutgers I did for women's basketball. That's a lie. But like the women's volleyball team was a bigger deal than the men's volleyball team. Wow. And I had not really seen that a lot, where the women outdraw the men in the same sport in a place. And then I covered a ton of surfing, which was sick. Like the surfing coverage was the best. I know. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say it, but I'm like calling my agent every day and I'm like, can you get me on the Tokyo Olympics? Can I please do the surfing? Because it's the first year surfing is going to be in the Olympics. Like,
yeah,
that's going to be so sick.
I know. I'm dying. I'm like, I don't think it's going to happen at this rate, but I've been pushing it for years. I'm like, I know all the people from the World Surf League. I've got a ton of contacts over there.
Well, this on this podcast, you know, we like to manifest things into existence. So
yeah, put out the vibes.
This is it. This is where you're telling the universe that you want to cover the surfing in the Tokyo Olympics. So
yes,
yeah.
And it's already
putting it out there.
It's already NBC, so it's like, hello.
Yeah. I know.
But it's so weird how the universe works out now that we're talking about this. But like, it's almost the fact that you had the opportunity to go to Hawaii, it forced you to really learn so much about all sports. Like, and if you just stayed in this region, it's a very football, basketball, baseball, hockey world. Men, 4 sports. That's basically it. And so it was almost like God, the universe, whatever you believe in, whatever our listeners believe in, kind of pushed you and was like, oh, we have bigger plans for you. So like, we're going to make sure that you know about women's basketball and you understand about, you know, women's golf, but like, we're also going to still cover the NFL. Like, it's just kind of weird how some things happen. I say that about, I never thought that I'd ever be in country music, right? Like I was a top 40 hip hop girl, and the opportunity came, and now I'm all yee fucking ha. You know what I mean? So like it's just weird how it works out.
Yeah, I'm definitely like grateful for it on a lot of levels. I mean, it was because I had thought about staying in freelancing and continuing with Big Ten Network here for a while. But it not only just the sports side of it, but like if people don't know, your first market, especially when you're in sports, you end up shooting, editing, and I still write everything because I like to write everything, but you end up doing everything yourself. And then now when I'm doing shows, it actually helps me understand like how to so only pregame is scripted, everything else is not. And half the time pregame, like we just go like off the rails and we don't even talk about the words. Like the words in the prompter are really a reference point for me to remember what topic I'm trying to talk about in what place, because sometimes they're attached to sponsored elements. But it allows me to understand why my producer has to go from here to there in this order, and why my director, if I don't give him a verbal or physical cue, won't know to roll the music that bumps us into break, and certain things like that. And if I didn't have that experience, especially Hawaii News now, it may be in that Hawaii market, but like Keahi Tucker, our one anchor, was in DC. Lynn Kawano, our other anchor, was an anchor in Dallas. Our general manager was a general manager in Boston and San Francisco, and our news director was a news director in Boston as well. Like we have heavy hitters in that newsroom who just happened to be from Hawaii, and they wanted to, once they had achieved everything they wanted to achieve, they came back to work in Hawaii. So we ran at a really high level. I mean, we were just a really, like just a top-notch newsroom in terms of what people expected, how you put it out, and what you were putting out. And it was such a massive help, because when I came back, I was just like, I was a little not used to not having control of everything. So that was an adjustment, but I understood like how the meat gets made, really.
Yeah. What team do they root for in Hawaii?
It's all over the place. It's so interesting. It's basically whoever was good when you were a little kid tends to be who you root for. So like there's like a generation of Steelers fans, and they're all the same age. And there's a generation of Cowboys fans, and they were all young in the 90s. Like there's a generation of San Francisco 49ers fans, and it was from when Jesse Stapolu, who's from Hawaii, played for the 49ers. Like now, there were a ton of Oregon fans, college, obviously, when Marcus was out at Oregon. And there's a ton of Dolphins fans that have popped out of nowhere now. So, and then a lot of the time they'll root for like LA teams or Vegas now, that like Vegas has the Golden Knights and the Raiders. A lot of Raiders fans too. A lot of Raiders fans in Hawaii. Okay. But yeah, it kind of depends on who was good when you were a kid. Because I got there and I was like, why are there all these Steeler fans?
Right. Yeah. You're like, this is so far from Pittsburgh.
I was like,
there's
what connection?
There's something I'm missing?
Well, and there was Troy Polamalu, who's Polynesian as well.
Yeah.
But I assume that's what the connection was. And my friend's brother-in-law, who's a huge Steelers fan, was like, I don't give a shit about Troy Polamalu. They were just good when I was growing up. Like, okay. All right. Fair enough.
So you get the call to come home, right? And so did you hesitate, or were you like, let's go?
No, I was at a Cinco de Mayo party and I left to cut my reel. Like I was in LA at a Cinco de Mayo party and I was like, hey, I got to get back. I was staying at my friend's apartment. I got to get back to your apartment and grab my laptop and like update my reel.
Right.
Send it out. Which was probably ill-advised because I had like 2 margaritas already that day, and I was just like, let's go. Yeah. But no, I didn't have any hesitation, and it was interesting because before that opportunity, my last contract with Hawaii News Now that I signed, I was home here in Philly visiting my parents, and I scheduled a time with Michelle Murray, who was the head of NBC Sports Philadelphia then. And I just basically asked her if she had some time to look at a reel and give me some contract advice. And she, graciously took it and like allowed me to chat, gave me some time. And she was the one who advised me. She said, ask for everything. Ask for the money you want. Ask for every single out that you want. Ask for everything. And then she's like, I remember as a GM when I say no, like I always remember that I said no and it weighs on me. And it's just a natural inclination for people. It weighs on them. So I went back to Hawaii News Now and I asked for the money that I wanted and every single out that I wanted, like regionals, anything in Philly, DC, or New York, and then like Miami or San Diego, just because they were like nice.
Yeah.
And they gave me the money I wanted and then took away all my outs except for Philly. So if I hadn't met with Michelle and she hadn't told me that, I don't know that Philly would have been included as an out in my contract. And so when Philly approached me with the job, the only way I was allowed to get out without like a financial penalty was because Philly was listed as an out in my contract.
Wow.
And so it was really like, it was kind of wild. And when I got hired at NBC Sports Philadelphia, I like remember telling her, I was like, thank you so much for like taking that meeting with me, because otherwise I don't think I'd be able to come back. And, it sounds crazy, but I had been in Hawaii from like basically like the day after I turned 22 until 25. And I was starting to get like antsy to come home.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
That's a long time. And like those years are like, not like formative years, but like your early 20s are just like so like you're still like young and fresh and like trying to like figure shit out, and like here you are like all the way across the world.
Yeah.
And I felt like I didn't really have my fun in college. Like college was really about getting to the next step for me. Like it really was. That was what I was all about. And I got to have kind of my fun in Hawaii. Like I worked really hard, but I found a little bit more work-life balance. And just every day, I mean, you could go for like an hour-long hike in the morning instead of go to the gym, and it was enjoyable. So I got to have my fun there. But I was like 25. I was like, listen, I want to be close to my family. I had only seen my brother because he's in the military and he's stationed in Jacksonville Beach. Like I'd only seen my brother once in like 4 years.
Yeah.
I wanted to like settle down and find somebody, but be close to home, whatever. And I don't know that any of that would have happened if I didn't get that meeting. So there wasn't the hesitation to come home at all. No, but I think I knew, like I'd really come to peace with that. Maybe it was time for me to try to get to the next step, like a few months before it happened. And then it came together and I was like, all right, I guess, I got to put my money where my mouth is and actually take the next step. So worked out.
Wow. That's amazing. All right. So obviously we got to talk hockey. So you didn't cover hockey at all. Did you cover hockey really in Hawaii? Like explain how that transition was for you. And then we'll like kind of get into the nitty gritty of it. Okay.
The hockey stuff was interesting because I grew up Flyers first. We were a Flyers first household. Like my brother was a runner, but my parents always thought it was important for him to be into team sports too, because he always wanted to go to the Naval Academy. And if you want to be in the military, you have to know how to work in a team, kind of all that stuff. And so he grew up playing hockey. And so we grew up watching a lot of hockey. He actually grew up playing at the skate zone where the Flyers practice now. So I spent a lot of my time as a child at the skate zone. And we watched a ton of Flyers games because my dad, okay. Sorry, I'm like Tangent City. So
we love it.
My dad played college basketball. And so
how tall is your dad again?
My dad's like 6'4".
Wow.
Yeah.
And where do you play? What college?
He played at Rider.
Okay.
He played at Rider. He was supposed to play at the Naval Academy as well. And then I think he was kind of like, I don't know if this is for me. And then ended up going to Rider. And also because it was a full scholarship, and quite frankly, he's from Riverside, New Jersey, and wanted to go to college, and his parents didn't have a ton of money to help him pay for it. So shout out to Jeff for using those basketball skills.
Yeah.
Education. So he played college basketball, and obviously he's like a middle-aged man, and so now when he watches NBA basketball, he's like, "This is not the brand of basketball I grew up playing, and I want you to play college basketball." So
there's
I don't.
Too many threes.
Yeah,
there's
like
too many threes. They're ruining the league.
I want either we're watching college basketball or we're watching women's basketball in this house, because he naturally wanted me to play basketball, even though like I was not really, that wasn't my thing. And so like Sixers we watched, but it wasn't like huge in our house, and Eagles we watched because it was like what we did, but like Flyers is what we watched. Like we paid it, like we're watching every shift, who's on the ice, all of that. And then I went to Hawaii, and yeah, like Flyers games come on at 1 p.m. and with the time change, and I could really only get national games because as much as people think like you make lots of money in this business, I was dead broke. And so it's not like I could afford the NHL package. I could barely afford the internet.
Right.
And
especially in Hawaii, because Hawaii is so expensive.
Oh, it's $7 for like a thing of orange juice.
Yeah.
It's insane. There are a few months of like eating like baked beans for dinner. Like my skin just like raged against me. Yeah, but so it was tough because when I came back, like I had followed them while I was away. Like I feel like every year on the season opener, I posted like a throwback Thursday to like being in Philly for a Flyers game. I was definitely like tapped in, but I couldn't actually physically watch most games. And so when I came back, I wasn't hired as the rinkside reporter. I was hired as a host and anchor, like to fill in on then Philly Sports Talk and NBC 10 and SNC. Although some people who don't know what they're talking about have reported that I was a digital reporter. I was never a digital reporter.
Nothing broad. Excuse me. I'll say she won't.
Well, yeah. It's just like, just
I'll
ask.
say it.
Just ask me. Just ask. That's all. If you have a question, because your source doesn't know what's in my contract, so just ask. So I was hired.
Why would a white male ask a female in sports for details?
I don't know.
They know all, don't they?
I don't know. When like a radio personality has an out of the blue claim, go figure. That's then confirmed by Derek Gunn, because how else could it be true? And I love Derek Gunn. So you don't have to talk to me about the legitimacy of Derek Gunn, because I love him. Yeah. But I just sat there that day and I was like, woof.
An out of nowhere report by some rando, nobody knows who she is.
Well, it's like sometimes I would say things on a broadcast, like I would get things, this is a different story than what the question you asked was, but like there's times where I'll get something in an interview from a player, because like I went to morning skate and I hung around to get a one-on-one with the player or whatever, and I'll say it, and like the reaction to it is like, oh, I'm really curious to know if that's really what he said or whatever. And then Jim Jackson reiterates it 2 periods later, and he'll credit me for it. JJ's so good about that. Like I have to give so much credit to all the guys I work with. Like you want to talk about being at the forefront of like respecting, your peers and their hard work. Like I feel like with the Flyers, we're really good about that. But then when JJ reiterates it later in the game, it's like, oh, what an interesting tidbit of information. And it's like, okay. So
then it's like Bible, and you're like, I just said it because I was the one who got the information. But why is it that he has to confirm it for it to be true? I mean,
and that's where it's like, I do get really thankful when JJ goes, as like, it's a small thing, and I try to do it. Like if JJ shows me a stat, I'm always like, Jim Jackson, pointed out this great stat. But JJ's really good about being like, as Taryn mentioned in the break, or as Taryn mentioned earlier in the broadcast, or, or as Scott mentioned, whatever. And it helps because whether it's right or not, like JJ is a respected voice in this town. So as many respected voices build up other people's voices, the better off we all are. But sometimes I'm like, guys, do you think I just like pulled this out of my ass? What are you even, Like I have to see these players every day. If I make up words that they say, they're going to stop saying anything to me. So what are you talking about? But I digress.
Let it out. That's what it's here for.
I wanted to briefly, while we're on this, I wanted to talk about how you and we were just having this conversation, because she was like, I see the shit that you got about Carson Wentz. She's like, and she gets the same thing with Carter Hart, because she knows, she's like, he's the supremely talented goalie, right? Like he's the guy, like he's actually the future of the organization. But for whatever reason, I guess when Brian Elliott was in net, because it was last week. So what did you say? And everyone was like, well, what, like Elliott's better. And it's like momentarily, but Carter Hart's the guy, you know what I mean? And for whatever reason, they the fans just can't separate or understand like the second level to like, yeah, like there's time and place. And like when Carter Hart's like not at his best, like of course, like Brian Elliott's going to step in. So you go on.
Yeah. So it was after the Tahoe game. And I think it was after the Tahoe game. And I tweeted out, because everybody started calling him like Carson Hart and,
Wait,
Carter
that's
Wentz.
what I said to Natalie. I go, is Carter Hart turning into Carson Wentz?
No. And
no. And I always will say, that's why I was so glad to have you on too. Cause like Natalie knows her hockey shit. Hockey's like the least that I know about. I didn't grow up with it. I grew up with basketball, football, baseball. So I'm always kind of like, I always tread lightly and try to like, so I was like, is Carter Hart turning into Carson Wentz, and she's like, no. And so, yeah, elaborate on that.
So I think it's recency bias as well, because this is such a fresh thing in everybody's brain.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, few differences. Carson Wentz should be in his prime right now and was given a big, giant contract that goes with that and is a massive cap hit to the Eagles, even not being on the Eagles. Carter Hart is still in his rookie contract, doesn't even cost $1 million a year, and it's very much like some goalies come out of the gates and they're phenomenal right away, but it's pretty rare. Like, it's not super common. And Carter was really good early. Not saying he should win the Vezina. No one ever has said that, but he had, like, when he plays a good game, you say he's played well. And I will never back down from saying he works super hard. He cares a lot about hockey, and the quality of his character is through the roof. Like, huge community guy. None of it's like a PR orchestrated thing. Like, really, if he hears about some way he can help someone, he helps someone. Now, something about saying that about a person, apparently to some people, reads as though we think that they should win every single MVP award that has ever existed in the entire history of the National Hockey League, which is not true. He's not even the best player on this team, and he's certainly not the best player in the league, or the best goaltender in the league, I should say. The problem is that with goalies, it's such a tough thing as well. And I think this is the same conversation that sometimes you fall into with quarterbacks.
Which is why I say that like Philadelphia's issue with both teams was it's always, since Hextall, it's been a revolving door with goalies, and it's been a revolving door with quarterbacks since Donovan McNabb. Like, those are the most pinnacle positions in sports.
Yeah.
Because, like, even if you think about like baseball or basketball, like you don't need anybody as crucially, like, or as I don't even know if that's a word, as crucial as you need your goalie and your quarterback. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
And if they're not right, then your entire team is messed up.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at, like, now I'm getting like deep hockey talk, but if you look at like the Oilers up in Edmonton have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl who rack up points and assists every night. That feels like, I mean, recently they've been on a bit of a slump the last 3 games, but like, on any given night, they have like 6 points in a game, which most hockey players don't get 6 points in a game, like, ever.
Right.
In the NHL. And Edmonton still can't really be a contender for a cup because they have goaltending issues. So it just goes to show how important a goaltender is.
As my dad always says, offense sells tickets, but defense
wins championships. Yeah. And it's true. And Carter has had some bad games this season where he's played bad. He has really bad stats this season, though, and a lot of them has to do with how bad the team has been in front of him. The problem is that you have, especially with a position like a goaltender that's so important, a lot of times you have 2 camps, and it's like the Carter for president people and the anti-Carter Hart haters. Like it's just two completely different things. And if I say, or even if like Brian Boucher, who played goaltender in the National Hockey League, says, I'm not worried about Carter's stats. The Flyers have let up a lot of goals. A lot of those games have nothing to do with him, and he didn't have a chance on most of those goals. He'll come around. He's 22. He'll grow up and he'll get better, and everybody needs to not worry about it. Then all of the Carter Hart for President people are like, see, like, listen. And all the haters are like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's a Carter stan. Like this, that, and the next thing. It's like, no, I'm not. Like Brian Elliott's played better this season. I've said it a dozen times, but you don't listen when I say that. You only listen to me saying, I mean, when the Flyers lost to the Penguins on Tuesday and it was 5-2, Carter Hart had no shot on any of the goals. Although the fifth goal was a mistake. He was trying to get off the ice to bring on an extra skater, and then the guy just lofted the puck kind of past him, and it was a mistake. But the team played horribly in front of him. But if you say that, which is acknowledging the truth within the game, you kind of piss off one side or the other. And if you acknowledge that he's played really bad in certain games, which he definitely has, his angles look completely different this year. He said he played around with them in the off season. It seems like he looks smaller in the net. Like there's some issues there that he's got to work out. Then the pro, Hart people kind of get mad. And then the reality of the situation is we have to talk about the goalies every game. Like we have literally sponsored elements about the goalies. So we have to talk about the goalies every game. And acknowledging what they did in the game is not like a long-term diagnosis of what they're going to do in their career. But because I think it's like we were saying, it's like it's as important as a quarterback can be in football. It provokes just like really strong reactions from people.
Well, and
but I'm not worried about them. Like I'm really not.
Well, and it's like, yeah, like how you're saying how the team, when you acknowledge, yes, like he's not playing well, but the team's also not playing well in front of him. It was like with Carson, he wasn't playing well, but he was also playing behind a decimated offensive line. Yeah. So it's like,
and the worst wide receiving core in the league.
Yeah. So it's just funny how, for whatever reason, and when you're on the receiving end, when you're the one giving the opinion and you're on the receiving end of people's like visceral reaction and their immediate reaction because they feel whatever way they want to feel about, the pivotal person on the team, you're just kind of like, why aren't you getting what I'm saying? Like, why can't you see that there are like layers to this?
Yeah. And I've never given like a long-term opinion on any player, maybe except for Sean Couturier. But like I've never given like a kind of overall opinion of a player, especially a young player, because scouts will be the first person to tell you, like, you try your best, you do your homework, but you never know what's really going to happen. Like you don't know what's going to happen. So I haven't even, like, we haven't seen Carter play a full season yet. So I don't know how anyone thinks that anybody's given a true opinion on whether or not he's going to pan out and be, this savior that he is. But we can certainly say in a game that he stood on his head, If he played well in that game, I have to acknowledge what actually happened in the game. I cannot pander to the outcries of random people. I have to acknowledge what's going on. And in some games, it's been that he's played really well. And in some games, it's been that he's played really poorly. And in other games, it's been that the Flyers really need like a veteran top two defenseman. The problem is, and this is something that people, I think, kind of forget as well in the weirdness of 2021, there's an expansion draft coming up, and the Flyers have to be careful about what contracts they sign because, like, you can't protect everybody. And the Flyers probably already have three defensemen they want to protect, which would be Ivan Provorov, Travis Sanheim, and Phil Myers. That would be my guess. So if you come in and you sign somebody and they want to be protected and they want a long-term contract and whatever, you have to part ways with one of those three players. There's a lot of things at play here because of the weirdness of this year and the Seattle expansion and everything in between. But yeah, I don't think Carter's like career is over. I don't think he's having a good season. It'll be fine. Brian Elliott is having an outstanding season. I can't believe at 35 years old he's playing the way he's playing.
I was gonna say last night was like ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, but Carter made some huge saves on Tuesday.
Yeah,
and I sit there and I'm like, those get lost in the rest of the kind of crappy minutia of that game. But if you really look at the chances versus the stops from each game, I think you would be like, yeah, this sucks, because he probably could have played better Tuesday, but he probably deserved better than 5 goals. So, Carter's not Carson. No one's paying him $1 bajillion. His teammates and him get along. So that's not an issue. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, let's go back for 1 second, because I love that you brought up how there's like Carter for president and then Carter haters. And there's obviously Carson for president, Carter haters. You worked in the New York market, you worked in Hawaii, you're obviously working in Philly, you're from Philly. What is the difference? Because did you see the quote that Jason Peters released yesterday about Carson Wentz? And he said, there's no issue, it's Philadelphia. And it's the toughest place to play, right? And there's been
I heard that's a lie, though. I heard there were issues, but
Yeah.
Well, the Chris Long, Malcolm Jenkins just did an amazing podcast where they talked about it at length. And they basically said, like, he's like, we've played with a lot of locker room cancers. He's not a locker room cancer, but like he needs to, weirdly enough, Natalie and I talked about this in like 2 podcasts ago about how he can't relate to players. And then weirdly,
I just listened to it the other day.
But then
I was talking to Natalie about it the other day.
Yeah.
But then Malcolm Jenkins was on Chris Long's podcast and they said the exact same thing. They were like, he needs to learn how to reach out. He needs to learn how to relate to players. He's like, Nick Foles is magnetic and just would walk around the locker room and hang out with everybody. I was like, oh, it was weird how we just all talked about it. But, my whole theory, and Natalie and I agree on 95% of everything, 99 really. But the one thing she's in the media, sports media, I think, and I don't think it's just the media. I think Philadelphia, the fans, the media in general, they're too hard on the players and the players can't handle it. And it's not warranted. Like if we were banging out championships every 2 years, then I'd be like, yeah, let's, do it. Like be hard on them because it works. But we've had 2 championships in like 50 years. So obviously the intensity and the scrutiny isn't working. So I'm curious, from another market like Hawaii and New York, does this happen there where people have, like, literally it's like pro Carter, I hate Carter, I love Carson, I hate, it's in every sport.
We're like bipolar about people.
Yes, Ben Simmons is another. I love Ben Simmons, I hate Ben Simmons. It's Bryce Harper, I love Bryce, I hate Bryce. Like it's literally in every sport. And I don't think it's as intense in other places. And that's why we keep talking to people in other markets and other cities. And they're all like, yeah, Philly's insane. But I'm curious, as you being a sports reporter in Hawaii, in New York, elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, it was one of the things when I was out in Hawaii that got brought up to me all the time was like, you're from like the Philly area. Yeah. Are you a Philly sports fan? Yeah. Like snowballs and batteries, snowballs and Santa and batteries of people and whatever. I do think we're tougher here, probably more so than anywhere else. My guess is that if Boston hadn't been good for like the past, feels like bajillion decades, that Boston fans would probably be somewhat along the same line. But Kevin Hayes, as much as he ended up last year being like beloved here in Philly, Kevin Hayes was not, he was really a lightning rod for hate early in the season last year because he was not producing. He just signed that big contract. I think a lot of people didn't think that for that money, he was kind of like a splashy enough name. But he ended up, he's huge for that locker room, whether he's collecting points or not, he's huge for that locker room. But he had a really interesting thought on it because he played for the Rangers then he was with Winnipeg, like super briefly before he was picked up by Philly. And he said, I asked him about all the hate that he was getting on Twitter. And he was like, I don't look at any of it. Like sometimes my brother sees something like really funny, or my sister, they'll like screenshot it and text it to me and be like, I know you like try not to look at it, but this is kind of like a sick burn. And, but he was like, I'd rather be here because the thing is in New York is there's so much going on. There's so much you can do and be interested in that people go to Rangers games sometimes almost to like be seen there or as like a social outing kind of a thing. but they don't really know like who's on the third line. You know, they don't really know who like the third D pair is. Like,
right.
They don't really know. And in Philly, they know. And not suffering through indifference is better than, you know, I prefer to suffer through someone like viscerally hating me than someone just being completely indifferent to the team.
We say this a lot. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference.
Yeah. Because if they hate you hard, they'll love you hard. Like,
yeah.
And I think that's the thing you hear from a lot of people about playing in Philly. And if you look at a lot of the people who played for the Flyers for any decent stretch of time, a lot of them come back and live in South Jersey, like a lot of them. So there's something about being in this area that like they like, and being in this scene that they like. I mean, Scott certainly got plenty of opinions when he was playing for Philly, and he loves it here, and he kind of loves it. He's like, it if you can laugh it off and navigate it, it's kind of awesome, because it's at times it's really funny and it's kind of crazy.
I feel though,
I think it's tough. I think it's
most
tough.
Hockey players are like from Canada or the Dakotas, so like Philly's like Florida to them, so that's why why
I always said that in my next life I want to come back as like a Flyers alumni. Like I don't even want to like go through like the whole playing period. I just want to be like, I just want to be
a Flyers alumni is a freaking,
like, you are just like set up for life, and then you're like unofficial mascots, and you get just
take the best care of their former players. They really do.
Did I ever tell you about the story with my little brother, and Bernie Perrant?
No.
So my dad, you know, my dad is like, he still like lives and breathes like the Broad Street Bullies, and like my dad's like a huge hockey person, and like that was his time, like the 70s. My dad was like in his 20s and like partying in AC and like discoing downtown, and like lived and breathed the Broad Street Bullies.
Rexy's in Collingswood.
Yes. So he's like, so we went to a Flyers game, and my dad, anytime he sees Bernie, he's like, oh God, there's Bernie. Right. So he says to my like little brother, who's like 12 years old at the time, he's like, Bill, like, why don't you go on over and say hi to Bernie? And my brother's like, Dad, I've met him like 60 times. He's like, I know that you love Bernie, but like
Bernie Perrant.
Yeah. He's like, I don't have like the same like joy every time I've seen Bernie, because I've seen Bernie 75,000 times.
Yeah.
It's just like they just like have this like sweet like existence where they're just like team representatives until the end of time. I'm like, that's what I want in my life.
Well, and it's reciprocal, because like the alumni do a ton of work, and then it also gives the alumni work. And like when I talk to Scott about doing like what he's doing now, is he's just kind of like, I like to do this because it's fun and it's something to do. Like I'm still young. I don't want to sit at home all day. Like a lot of them want something to do, and the Flyers give them all jobs. I mean, you could.
For non-Philly or non-hockey people, talk a little bit about Scott and what he's doing, and kind of a little backstory on it.
Gotcha. Sorry. So Scott Hartnell used to play for the Flyers. Was actually on the team that made that run to the Stanley Cup final in 2010. Lost in Game 6. He was like on the team in my like prime hockey watching era of like, you know, high school.
Those were the days.
Early college, you know. And then now he's our analyst on Flyers pre and post game and intermission lives. And Scott's just awesome. Like, he's such a character around the NHL. If you look up Scott, I'm sure you recognize the hair. He's the guy who like brought the Hulk Hogan salute to the NHL, and
hilarious.
He's just awesome. And he's funny. Sometimes I wish that I could capture the moments off air that he says, because he's funny as hell. And then, you know, on air, everybody's like trying to be more polished, and I'm just trying to like drive the train off the tracks as hard as I can every single show, because I think it adds something that's like that. Well, every time Jonesy comes on, he does it for me. He's just like, script, light it on fire. Let's talk about something else. But yeah, Scott's awesome. And so basically he retired. He didn't retire that long ago, like a few years ago. And he was just like, I want something to do. And so he works for NHL Network as well, but he works on Flyers pre and post game with me most games. It's him or Al Morganti, and Al Morganti's a gem as well. God.
I just get like giggly thinking.
You're like, It's interesting though when you talk about the Flyers, because I have a quick little tidbit, but before that, you're right. A lot of the alumni do end up staying here and being involved. And we've talked, I don't know if we talked about it in the podcast, but Natalie and I've definitely talked about it off air, where I just feel like in other sports, players leave immediately. It's like they're almost run out of town. Like Donovan McNabb ran out of town. You know, Ryan Howard ran out of town. Like where it's the Flyers, they're like welcome to stay. And maybe it's because they're always kind of like the fourth team in the you know, the rank of Philly, and so the fans love them, but like overall it's not as intense, and so they have a little bit of like there's more love, or there's just it's not as, the scrutiny isn't as intense, so
I think
feel the love more compared to the other sports where like as soon as their time in Philly is up, they literally leave immediately.
I think if you love like if you're a beloved Flyer for whatever reason at whatever time, like you're beloved forever, which is why like Scott Hartnell can come back and everyone's like, you know, Hartnell down, and then like everybody will like cheer and be like, yeah, you like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Why is that though? Why isn't it like that the other sports?
I also think it's a different. I think there is some overlap. Like there's 4 for 4 Philly fans,
yeah,
you know, whatever. But I do think there are people who are Flyer. They are Flyer people. They are hockey people. They are Flyer people. And I think that they like just really do. If you give effort to the city, they really do love you. I think the other thing, and Daryl Morey can stick this in pipe and smoke it, is that as much as, you know, you want to talk about the blue collar hockey thing, I think hockey players work their ass off, and it's incredibly evident all the time in the way the game is played and the types of injuries people sustain. And Matt Niskanen like had his nose like ripped into 3 pieces and got it sewed up and played the third period. And there's a certain amount of respect that comes with like, they just didn't work hard to get here. They're not just highly skilled. They also like really do completely put their bodies on the line and don't complain about it, that people respect. And I do think there is something to, Flyer fans are protective of Flyers, like, because I think that a lot of hockey fans are kind of irritated by the idea of like niche sport this or, you know, whatever. And it's kind of like, okay, well, if we're your niche sport, we don't need you here. We can fill the arena with just the fans that we already have. And I think they're kind of protective. They're like, if you don't know what icing is, like, don't have an opinion on our players. Or if you don't know what, you know, why Nolan Patrick got called for boarding, but it was kind of worth it because it was against Mark Friedman last night. Like,
yeah,
don't sit here and pound on Patty. Like, and there's a certain amount of like territorialness, I think, that protects the Flyers from the kind of like
scrutiny, extra
stray opinions. Yeah. Because with the Eagles, like I have friends who basically, you know, like go to Xfinity for the social aspect of watching an Eagles game, but don't watch a single down of Eagles football. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, like Carson needs so much more protection, and like it's not his fault, he doesn't have weapons and blah blah blah. And I'm like, were you listening to like Natalie in the car on like Miss Nell's show driving to work? Like, is that what just happened? Because I've had this conversation with Natalie, and I know you didn't watch the game.
Yeah.
Right. You don't really get that with Flyers fans. Like, either be in and know what you're talking about, and when you know what you're talking about, you tend to have more, I think, respect for most of the people involved, not everyone involved, but like, I think the deeper, the closer you are to an organization, the more you kind of, you realize, you know, all the effort that goes into things, and it makes you more respectful, I guess, of the product and the people who create the product. And Flyers fans just really are, like, Flyers fans are like close to the organization. Like, they care about the entire organization. Like, you could walk on the concourse and someone would talk to me about like Cam York, who's a top draft pick for the Flyers, but who's playing at Michigan right now, and they know all of his numbers, like all of his stats this year. that's, I think, how Flyers fans are. Like, they're really in it. And when you're in it, I think you tend to be protective of your people from outside voices. But I also think that's why, like, when I came back and I got into hockey, it was a little bit intimidating at first, because it was like, while I was very much like a Flyers person my whole entire life, I didn't want Flyers people to feel like, who is this broad? Where did she come from? Why is she here? Why is she talking to me about my boys? Because that's the thing, is like, a lot of times here on Flyers Twitter, people are talking about like my guys, my boys, my team, my whatever. And it's in a very kind of like mama bear, papa bear kind of way.
Yeah.
That would be my thought.
It's interesting how different it is, especially from somebody like me who's not in the hockey. In fact, it's just really funny because when I came to Philly and I first was an intern, my boss at the time her best friend was like, hey, she needs a babysitter. And it ended up being Bobby Clark's grandkids. And like, I had no idea who Bobby Clark was at the time because like, I didn't grow up with hockey. And so like, I babysat his grandkids and I like drove to the house and like people were like freaking out. And like, he came home and we were just like hanging out and they're like, what was he like? I was like, I don't even know who this man is. But now obviously that I've been in Philly for as long as I have, and I know the sports, I was just like, oh, that was like that's a cool little sports tidbit that like, and his grandkids have to be, I mean, Emmy and Stoney are probably in their like almost 20 at this point. Cause it was like probably they're at least like 18, 19, maybe even older than that. But anyway, it was just like a very fun tidbit, which, so who's your prediction for the NHL finals?
Oh man, it's so tough because like
Natalie and I called the Super Bowl, so we're letting you call.
Oh gosh.
Wait, while you think, my dad just texted me and was like, did you see Wayne Gretzky's dad died?
Yeah, last night.
I was like, Dad, I haven't seen it yet, but he literally just texted me that.
My friend Kim, who owns Nothing Bunk Cakes, just texted me that Brandon Graham went and picked up a cake for his son's birthday.
Brandon Graham's family is so beloved in this household. Like my boyfriend will send me videos of Brandon Graham's daughter and be like, look at Brandon Graham's daughter.
Dude, Emerson's I want Emerson to be on the podcast. Who cares about Brandon? Let's put Emerson on the podcast. She's my favorite. And Bryson, his son, the only reason I know this is because one of my best friends, her son has the same birthday, and Bryson just turned 2 today. So I was like, oh my God, you could be friends with Brandon Graham's son. But he like Emerson's like Brandon, where like they're super smiley and cute. And Bryson is like his wife, Carlin, who's just like, get away from me. And he's just like, it's so adorable. And so Nothing Bunk Cakes, if you've never been there. And even weirdly enough, Kim Wright, who owns Nothing Bunk Cakes, she's a hockey mom. She has 4 boys and they're all obsessed with hockey. And they all play in like leagues where she'll like travel to Ohio for the weekend.
Yeah.
I hope she has a lot of money because it's an expensive sport.
Oh yeah. But it's the Nothing Bunk Cakes. We're paying for her son's hockey. So maybe they'll be on the Flyers. But yeah, it's so weird that like we're having this hockey conversation and then like, anyway, so go ahead. You need to give us your prediction.
So this is what's tough because right now the NHL is only playing divisionally through the entire regular season. So the Flyers only play teams in the East.
Right.
The Canadian teams only play each other. The teams in the West only play each other, and all the people in the middle. And so it makes it tough because you don't watch every single team. I feel like I have to pick the Flyers in the East. Like,
you are? Okay. All right.
I feel like I can't not. Like, okay. I don't know. Is that wrong?
No, it's not wrong because they're actually like contenders this year.
Yeah.
Wait, and I know that we're going really long, but I have one more question, and it's just about the game last night. So this is going to air last week. So last night, Flyers come back, win the game. It was like insane. But what is up? Did Friedman, like, does he have like pictures of somebody's mom? Like, what's the deal? Like, why?
No, I don't care. I'll spill the beans here. I don't think he was particularly well liked, and I had to fly home from Tampa with him one time. It was me, our associate producer, and him. And we all opted to leave Tampa a night early because I had to get home for I think a bridal shower or something.
Yeah.
And the vibes were not good from him. They were not good from him last year. This is last year. And so when that happened last night, I was not surprised. And he ran after Nolan Patrick all night.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was just I mean, clearly there must have been some sort of beef, but I was like, damn.
He was big neggy vibes. Big neggy vibes.
Okay. Yeah. I just thought maybe it was former, former teammate hazing, how you give them an extra little shelf, but that was intentional.
He was trying to run up on Patrick a lot, right. I think. And and it's tough because we're not there in person, so we miss stuff. So I don't know exactly initiation, reaction kind of thing. He was trying to run up on Patrick a lot, which I personally think is bullshit, because it's don't run up on the guy with migraine disorder. I know he's the NHL. I know that he opted to play this year, but
no,
if you want to fight somebody, Nick Aubé-Kubel used to actually play with you, and he's more of a goon than Nolan Patrick is supposed to be.
Yeah.
It just, but then the hit where he actually got knocked out, he was trying to hit Patrick.
Yeah.
And Nolan Patrick, who by the way is not a big guy, Nolan Patrick's not thick. He's a kind of a thinner, athletic guy. Nolan Patrick just stood up to brace for impact, and Mark Friedman popped off of him. And you know what? It was a definition of doing too much. Yeah. And I hope that he's okay. I hope his head's okay. But Elaine Vigneault in the post game was not apologetic about it at all, which I think is all you need to know. He was it's hockey, hard hits happen.
Right.
All it is.
Because I was this is something, but there's something else there. So that's
I don't think his old teammates were super huge fans. And I am not a super huge fan myself. So since he's been in Pittsburgh, he's talked about how much he's loved Pittsburgh a million times.
He never
People
said that.
who love Pittsburgh don't love Pittsburgh as much as Mark Friedman claims to love Pittsburgh. It's a petty, shady, Bravo, Real Housewives of New Jersey kind of vibe to those press conferences.
Oh my God, I love it. I love how we're bringing, this is why this podcast is what it is. Because
did you hear about what Evan did at the gym? It's very Teresa trying to stir up.
We bring we relate the housewives to sports, because at the end of the day, and this is why people don't talk about it enough, is that it's petty bullshit.
Oh yeah,
all of it.
They're little housewives. Housewives is the sport of social manipulation and life. So the game ends, the clock comes to 0, and those guys walk away. No. Housewives, you're playing all day, every day until filming ends, and then you go back to the reunion and you revisit it all. I think, oh my God, I could do a Sports Housewives podcast every single day of the week.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want more of the nitty gritty. I want to know why, who doesn't get along, and what's the beef, and is it just
most of the guys the locker room this year is really, really good. I'll say the locker room 2 years ago, the season that was really bad, 2018, 2019. It wasn't that it was bad. There was no cancer in the locker room, what Chris and Malcolm Jenkins were talking about. It wasn't like that, but there wasn't Kevin Hayes' importance to the Flyers locker room is massive, because when they were bad and they were struggling in 2018, 2019, it felt heavy every day. You walked in and it felt heavy, and you knew the coach was going to get fired at some point. So that's part of it. And then, Ron Hextall ended up getting fired before even the coach got fired.
Howie should have been fired before Doug.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, it's a hockey podcast. I'm sorry.
No, you're 100% right, because I know we're running long, but Deion Sanders did a podcast and he was talking about it too, and he was like, if you're gonna fire your coach, fire your GM. What's the point of keeping one and keeping the other?
Yes.
If you're gonna fire your GM, you have to kind of fire the coach, or have the coach re-interview with the GM in private, and then let the GM make the decision.
Yeah.
But there's no, if you're going to do it, really do it, because your GM's always going to hire some iteration of what he's already hired, or try to.
Yeah.
And your coach is always going to be the coach he is and the GM's gonna have to try to adjust to him, and very rarely does that work. And when Ron Hextall got let go, I know he's a beloved Flyer, and it looks like he's a genius now because Mark Friedman scored last night and picked him up off waivers. But like, you couldn't just fire Dave Hextall because Ron was still going to run the organization how Ron was going to run it, and he was probably going to hire some other version of that. Well, who knows? But he still would have run it how he's going to run it. And I think with it felt like it was time to start pulling the trigger more on these young players who were the Carter Harts of the world, the Oscar Lindbloms of the world, the Travis Sanheims, the Phil Myers, like all these young players who turned out to really bloom and blossom. So yeah, no, it's 100%. Yeah, you have to. I never understand when you only fire one. Clean house, get rid of everybody and start again. If you really want to start again, start over. But it's like if you mess up the cookie dough and then you dump more sugar in it, it doesn't fix the cookie dough. The cookie dough is still screwed. Like,
yes,
that's a great analogy. That's a great analogy.
That's going on a quote.
Yes, that's the quotable.
Analogies are like, they're like, what's your secret talent? I'm like, analogies.
Yeah.
I feel like though, and I know we got to go, but I feel like since there's so many Canadians, like when people fight in the locker room, are they like, oh, you think you're cool, eh?
Well, not a lot of ours. A few of ours are French Canadians. So
are Canadians mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, they're polite, but they're not like.
They're like shit talkers.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like they're like shit talkers. Like they're not like. They're not.
I mean, hockey is the sport of violent gentlemen. Like that's what the joke is about hockey. I think that Canadians are polite. Like there used to be a rule that media had to get on the plane and like get through baggage claim and stuff or whatever after the players. And all the Canadian guys would always like want to hold the door and let me through. I'm a woman and I'd be like, I can't go. Like, just go. Just walk through the door. Like, thank you, but please just go because Ron's going to get mad. And they're very polite, but like, no, they don't fight with each other. But like in the locker room, they're pretty, I feel like they just see each other so much that you kind of can't. Teams that fight with each other, they're like dysfunctional as hell. Like, and it's very apparent. Flyers haven't had that. But like on the ice, when they chirp each other, they say mean shit. Like they go after hairlines, facial hair, physical appearances. They get. I mean, like Scott Lawton said, he grew a mustache because he got so much shit about how much his hairline is receding. So he was like, I just need to draw attention somewhere else. Like, I just have to redirect the eyes. So.
This was awesome. Tell everybody how to find you if you're not already following her. And if you.
I think my Twitter's Taryn NBCS, maybe. My Instagram's at Taryn Hatcher. I'm on the Flyers Talk podcast, which I was told to promote. So please listen to the Flyers Talk podcast if you enjoy the hockey portion of this. Just as much sass, a little bit more pucks involved in that one.
That's good too.
And then Flyers pre and post game live. We're on an hour before every show. If it says the warm up, it's also part of pregame. So feel free to tune in for that if you're looking at your listings. And then I'm Taryn NBCS on Twitter. And I'm there with generally me and Natalie are like Jon Snow with swords here to take on all the knuckleheads. And
that's right.
It is. You really
knock them down one at a time and put them in their place.
Yes. Somebody has to. Might as well be us.
Yeah.
And I'm here to retweet because I'm just not as witty as you guys are.
I'm sure you are. It's just like, it's, what the thing is that if it's in your gut in the moment, you just can't insult like looks, intelligent, or follower count. I feel like that's just like, you just shouldn't do it anyway.
Yeah.
But if you can make someone feel stupid without calling them stupid, like just by making sense, that's really gut punch every time.
Yeah. It's
like, ooh, stats. Imagine that. You know, it's kind of.
I know. I'm gonna work on it. I'm gonna go to. I'm better in person than I am on Twitter, but I appreciate the genius that is Twitter. That's why I'm good at the retweets.
I said it on air. I think Twitter's where happiness goes to die. So
It does.
it
Yeah.
matters.
It's-
I'll be a better person.
The abyss.
It does.
Which, by the way, all right, everybody, thank you, Taryn. I love you so much. You know that.
Yes. This was
and
so great.
Yes, this was so fun. And all right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Go Flyers! Woo!